Welcome to the RusNkaZ Show, where your host, BamBam, that's me, turns chaos into clarity and headlines into impact. This segment, it's your weekly dose of no fluff news, a rapid fire breakdown of everything that actually matters from the past 7 days. I'm talking about the stories that hit home financially, mentally, spiritually, and yes, even that gut check level that makes you rethink your week. Why did I build this part of the show? Because I know you've got better things to do than scroll through 17 news sites, flip between biased channels, and wonder what's real. I do the digging, the decoding, and the dissecting, so you don't have to. I'll inform, entertain, analyze, and throw in my own commentary to keep it a little spicy and relevant. My goal? To keep you informed without the overload so you can get back to doing what you do best. Stacking that paper, paper, money, money. Loving your people and walking with purpose for God. Thank you for riding with me. I'm Bam Bam, your truth teller. You're signaling the noise, and this is the RusNkaZ Show, where we serve up unbiased facts, real talk, and leave you standing at the crossroads of you making your own decisions. Subscribe. It's free, it fuels the mission, and it keeps the lights on and camera rolling. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'll try to get back to every single one of them. From the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you. You could have swiped or clicked onto any other video, but you decided to spend your precious time with me. And for that, I'm truly grateful for each and every single one of you. And now, for the weekly updates and the news breakdown for the week of October 12th to 18th, 2025. Let's roll!
This is the RusNkaZ Show. Bam Bam calling shots like a maestro. This is the RusNkaZ Show, where the wild and the crazy grow. Turn it up, feel the rhythm flow. Hustle rock, bam bam. Let's go, let's go.
The week of October 12th to 18th, 2025 was marked by an extraordinary convergence of historic events and new developments across politics, economics, science, humanitarian crises, culture, and entertainment. The United States endured one of its longest ever federal government shutdowns, sparking nationwide social movements and historic protests. Globally, financial institutions released sobering economic outlooks as trade tensions escalated. Scientific milestones captured world attention, and humanitarian situation in regions such as Sudan and Gaza remained dire. In the realms of culture, sports, and entertainment, annual observances, major awards, and international debates reflected deeper social changes. This comprehensive report provides an in-depth analytical review of the week's most consequential news stories, highlighting their significance and interconnections and contextualizing their impacts on society, policy, and global affairs. And I believe it affects you as well as myself. And that's why I covered them. Hopefully, those are the topics that you're interested in as well as I am. Do definitely comment below, but don't forget to subscribe. But do comment below if you think that I missed an event or something that was newsworthy that I didn't include. So please add it in the comments so that next time I would know what not to miss and which genres or topics you guys are actually interested in, besides the ones that interest me and the ones that I think that you might like. But actually, the ones that you actually do like, just comment below. Let me know. Thank you. U.S. federal government shutdown and its far-reaching impacts showed that as of October 18th, 2025, the U.S. federal government had been in a partial shutdown for 18 consecutive days, making it the third longest in American history. The standoff began just after midnight on October 1st when Congress failed to pass new appropriations bills for the fiscal year, largely due to irreconcilable disagreements on funding priorities between the Republican majority House the Democratic-led White House and the Senate Democrats. Central issues included the administration's push for robust climate spending, the Green Future Initiative, and the Republican insistence on massive new investments in border security, the Secure Borders Act. This legislative impasse resulted in cessation of most non-essential government operations and left over 750,000 federal workers furloughed, with essential employees, including military, air traffic controllers, border agents, and law enforcement, required to work without timely pay. Other services, such as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, continued dispersing payments but experienced significant strains and reductions in support activities. The U.S. Postal Service, being self funded, maintained operations, but while vital federal assistance programs like SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and WEAK continued only as long as funding allowed, with warnings of potential shortfalls by November if no budget resolution was achieved. Wow. Negotiators remained at loggerheads throughout the week. Democratic leaders refused to pass any spending plan that did not include permanent protections for the expiring Obamacare tax credits, crucial for tens of millions of insured Americans, while Republicans demanded their border security priorities be met and that tax credits be handled in standalone legislation. The Senate scheduled its 11th procedural vote on a compromise bill for Monday, October 20th, but with no significant defections from either side. The shutdown appeared likely to continue, risking further economic and administrative fallouts. The shutdown affected federal workers both financially and psychologically, with many forced to rely on food banks and community relief for assistance. Roughly 55% of the Defense Department's 740,000 civilian employees were furloughed, notably impacting areas such as training, procurement, and support. Mass reduction in force announcements targeted thousands of workers in departments deemed misaligned with current administration priorities, a move unprecedented in previous shutdowns since the 1980s. Contractors, unlike federal employees, were not guaranteed retroactive pay, amplifying hardship among millions, often lower wage, for whom even brief disruptions in income threatened housing, food security, and financial stability. Long delays in processing small business loans, export certifications, flood insurance, and new federal mortgages multiplied private sector anxiety, with small businesses especially vulnerable. National and political response, oversight bodies, courts, and the administration clashed over the legality and politics of firings and funding reallocations, with a federal judge temporarily blocking further mass firings to assess their legality. Civil society response was significant, as food banks and community organizations in major metropolitan areas such as D.C., Maryland, Kentucky mobilized to support federal workers and contractors. Lawmakers on both sides acknowledged the pain inflicted but remained steadfast in their core demands, worried about the political consequences of backing down. Public opinion was divided, with sizable portions blaming both Republican and Democratic leaders, and with little consensus on the way forward. Economic analyses by the Council of Economic Advisors, Congressional Budget Office, and private financial institutions found the shutdown's negative effects to be substantial but unlikely to cause a long contraction if resolved promptly. Each week of shutdown was estimated to reduce GDP by approximately zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.2 percentage points, equating to around $15 billion in lost output per week. Wow. With areas like Washington, D.C. suffering consumer spending reductions up to 5% in 2013 shutdown analogs. Cascading disruptions affected tourism as national parks, museums, and monuments closed. Aviation, as controller shortages delayed flights nationwide. And private business, as government contracts and regulatory approvals were suspended, a particular drag on the travel, hospitality, and housing sectors. In summary, The federal government shutdown dominated the United States domestic political life during the week, not merely as budgetary technicality, but as an all-encompassing disruption with significant human, social, and economic implications. No Kings protest and nationwide on October 18th, the No Kings protest erupted in more than 2,700 locations across all 50 states as millions mobilized in defense of American democracy, constitutional order, and to protest the leadership of President Donald Trump. Organizers, including over 200 advocacy groups from the ACLU to Move On and the American Federation of Teachers, projected attendance at nearly 67 million, potentially making the No Kings protest the largest single-day demonstration in United States history, a claim supported by independent estimates ranging from 4.4 to 6.1 million participants. Protesters condemned what they described as autocratic overreach, attacks on civil liberties, harsh immigration enforcement, and the deployments of the National Guard against United States cities, particularly Los Angeles, Washington, and Memphis. And participants urged to wear yellow for solidarity and emphasize both the positive defense of the First Amendment and the negative anti-Trump aspects of the cause, with local leaders incorporating theme of unity, justice, and democracy. Major U.S. cities saw turnout in hundreds of thousands, 250,000 in Chicago, 200,000 in Washington, D.C., and 100,000 each in New York and Boston. Demonstrations spanned small towns to large metros, including international solidarity events outside the U.S. in embassies from Berlin to Rome to London to Stockholm. The protest featured costumes, patriotic themes, music, and even satirical elements, such as protesters lampooned perceived abuses of power with creative banners and inflatables. The Trump administration largely dismissed the protests, with the president releasing an AI-generated satirical videos and insisting, "I'm not a king." High-ranking Republicans, including Speaker Mike Johnson and Senator Ted Cruz, denounced the events as hate America rallies and called for investigation into their funding, while some states preemptively deployed National Guard units and bolstered police presence. Despite some rhetoric predicting violence, protest organizers emphasized nonviolence, crowd de-escalation training, and peaceful assembly, with no major incidents reported. The No Kings movement invigorated progressive and pro-democratic activism, with events blending protest and celebration. Celebrities, artists, and musicians publicly weighed in, and media coverage highlighted the creativity and energy of demonstrations. The movement's impact extended into the cultural sphere, giving rise to new slogans, art, and community initiatives. In synthesis, the protest not only signified popular reaction to the government shutdown and Trump administration, but also manifested broader anxieties over the future of democracy and leadership in the United States. And also, Trump generated another AI motion picture, which I would love to share with you guys. Oh, wow. In a landmark move, Israel and Hamas reached a U.S. brokered ceasefire agreement on October 9th through 10th, the first phase of President Trump's plan for a comprehensive end to the Gaza war. Implementation through the week involved delicate hostage and prisoner exchanges, Israeli troop withdrawals, and the flow of humanitarian aid, ceasefire violations, and ongoing disputes about the return of hostages and opening of border crossings. Notably, Rafah tested the agreement's durability, while the region waited for the next phase involving governance restructuring and Hamas disarmament. The ceasefire plan, closely watched throughout the week, envisioned an interim international governance board and stabilization force and raised questions about the future of Palestinian self-determination. While humanitarian organizations ramped up efforts to clear debris and deliver relief in the devastated enclave, with UN agencies gathering support for post war reconstruction and addressing acute medical and food needs. While attention was divided, Sudan's humanitarian nightmare deepened further, with the UN and aid organizations warning of impending catastrophe in Darfur and besieged city of El Fasher amid ongoing fighting between the military government and the rapid support forces. Displacement continued at a massive scale, famine and malnutrition spread, and repeated attacks, including a deadly assault on a children's displacement center, galvanized international appeals for urgent assistance and safe humanitarian corridors. Epidemic outbreaks, destroyed infrastructure, and a collapsing health system compounded suffering, while funding gaps and access blockades threatened millions. The Sudan crisis served as a stark illustration of the world's waning focus and funding for humanitarian emergencies amidst so many competing global conflicts. Elsewhere, the UN and international agencies wrangled with the humanitarian, legal, and economic consequences of conflict, from Yemen's hostage crisis to cholera outbreaks in Haiti and Congo, demonstrating the persistent interlinkage of war, health, and poverty in 2025. The U.S. economy, even amid the budget impasse, showed a complex macroeconomic outlook. The Atlanta Fed's GDP, now estimated for Q3 2025, rose slightly from earlier projections to 3.9% annualized growth as of October 17th, suggesting resilient consumer and investment activity despite fiscal disruptions. However, official data releases for jobs and retail sales were delayed by the shutdown, clouding the economic data landscape. Unemployment hovered at 4.3% for August, most recent available figure. Job vacancies remained high at over 7.2 million, but monthly job creation slowed substantially, signaling a softer labor market. Federal Reserve officials debated the significance of these mixed signals, with some, notably Governor Waller and Miran, advocating for additional interest rate cuts, both to counteract labor market cooling and to cushion against heightened volatility caused by U.S.-China trade conflict, tariff escalations, and rare earth export restrictions. The ongoing shutdown generated a data vacuum that complicated policy decisions, spurred bond and equity market volatility, and threatened to undermine confidence in long-term economic stability and the predictability of data-dependent policymaking. Many sectors, travel, real estate, small business lending, education, and research, suffered directly from reduced government operations, while the private sector braced for ongoing delays in federal contracts, certifications, and loans. Mortgage rates eased slightly from recent highs but remained well above pre-pandemic levels, stifling housing activity and dampening consumer confidence. Oil prices bounced on geopolitical news, with energy markets watching supply risk from ongoing wars and Chinese export controls. U.S.-China trade tension, globalization, and industrial policy, trade relationships remained exceptionally fraught. President Trump's tariff regime, marked by threats of 100% duties on Chinese imports and broad national security rationales, provoked reciprocal Chinese export restrictions, notably on rare earth elements critical to high-tech and defense industries. The resulting uncertainty filtered through supply chains, raising input costs for manufacturers and stoking inflation in core goods, particularly as previous transitory effects begin to fade. Industrial policy debates gained prominence, with the IMF October World Economic Outlook devoting significant attention to potential benefits and downsides of active government support or specific strategic sectors. The IMF warned that poorly designed industrial policy could introduce inefficiencies, cross-sector spillovers, and fiscal strain, especially under conditions of elevated debt and policy fragmentation. The IMF's October 2025 WEO, released on October 14th, painted a picture of global economy in flux, with forecasts revised modestly upward compared to mid-year, yet remaining well below pre-pandemic and pre-trade war scenarios. Global GDP growth was pegged at 3.2% for 2025, down from 3.3% in 2024, with advanced economies expected to see around 1.5% growth and emerging markets holding just above 4%. U.S. growth, while upgraded slightly due to resilience of the private sector and then AI's investment boom, was still expected to decelerate to about 2% in 2025 from 2.8% in 2024 inflation, though easing was projected to remain stubbornly above targets in the US and several other nations, with tariffs and supply chain pressures as key drivers. The IMF made clear that the lingering effects of US-China trade fragmentation had not fully abated, and that policy uncertainty, rising interest rates, and eroding institutional independence posed significant downside risks. The fund's analysis emphasized the need for credible, transparent, and sustainable economic policy, restoration of fiscal buffers, and central bank independence. It also called for trade diplomacy paired with macroeconomic adjustment, and warned that undermining central bank independence carried real long-term risks for inflation and currency stability. The IMF reported 5.4% decline in oil prices from March to August 2025, and broad softness in commodity prices due to ample supply and demand side weaknesses, but cautioned that risks, especially from new wars and trade shifts, could quickly disrupt even this temporarily benign trend. A notable finding was the extraordinary contribution of AI investments to output and productivity, even amidst economic headwinds. However, labeled supply shocks, driven partly by new restrictions on immigration in the US and supply-side rigidities elsewhere, pose a threat to medium-term output, reinforcing demographic and policy challenges faced by advanced economies. Real-world intersections, AI adoption, retail and technology. AI's impact on labor demand was increasingly apparent, with large U.S. employers like Walmart holding employment steady even as sales grew, confident that automation and AI-driven role transformation would offset organic labor growth. The consequences for low and semi-skilled workers and for income distribution were under continuous analysis by policymakers and labor economists. Supply chain disruptions, especially in the high-tech, EV, and semiconductor sectors, were being monitored as both risks and opportunities, depending on the evolution of U.S.-China relations and domestic industrial policy. Breakthrough scientific achievements of the week: Milky Way Great Wave discovery. Astronomy made headlines on October 15th with the announcement by the European Space Agency's Gaia mission of a vast, unexplained wave rippling through the Milky Way, shifting stars across tens of thousands of light years, a finding that added new complexity to our understanding of galactic structure and evolution. Mapping by Gaia revealed wave stadium pattern, cosmic collisions as yet unknown galactic processes, pages globally, spurring fresh research into the history and dynamics of our home galaxy. In the same week, researchers from Europe and the US reported key breakthroughs in quantum internet infrastructure. Teams demonstrated operational quantum networks with secure, entangled communication over distances up to 100 kilometers and developed scalable quantum network nodes integrating trapped ions and photons, designed to link quantum computers and enable a true quantum internet with unprecedented cybersecurity and data speeds. European efforts, coordinated by the Quantum Internet Alliance and new demonstration nodes in the US and Asia, underscore the emerging reality of quantum networks for commercial, academic, and national defense applications. Biomedical researchers celebrated progress in areas such as lab grown organ transplantation with successful rejection free stem cell organ implants. CRISPR based therapies for inherited blindness and accelerated drug discovery thanks to deep learning and vast biological data sets. Of practical relevance, a long term major study published on October 14th and widely reported in health media found no link between calcium supplementation and dementia risk in older women, debunking prior epidemiological concerns and providing reassurance for patients and clinicians. Scientists in France and South Korea reported further progress toward commercially viable fusion energy, with pilot reactors achieving net energy gain, a critical milestone for future carbon free power generation. In parallel, new carbon negative cement and industrial scale deployment of plastic eating enzymes were reported in pilot projects in Europe and India, pointing the way toward breakthroughs in decarbonization and environmental cleanup. Controversy flared over new geoengineering schemes in the Arctic, particularly projects by UK based Real Ice to artificially thicken sea ice using seawater pumps and ice making robots. Field trials confirmed localized success at thickening ice in areas of Cambridge Bay, Canada, but scientists, indigenous leaders debated the risks and unintended consequences of manipulating polar environments at scale. A major review by over 40 polar experts reiterated the risks of large scale geoengineering and warned governments to focus first on emission reductions rather than technological quick fixes. The major long term calcium supplement study resolved concerns about the cognitive safety of osteoporosis medication in older women, notably those over the age of 80, concluding nearly 15 years of follow up without detecting any dementia link. This outcome supported continued use while leaving open the need for research in other demographics. Elsewhere, breakthroughs in AI powered drug discovery, enabling not only faster molecule design, but also previously unimaginable precision in targeting rare diseases, were announced, foreshadowing new waves of personalized and preventive medicine. The week's progress and debate over Arctic geoengineering put a spotlight on the ambitious but controversial notion of manipulating planetary systems to stabilize climate. Proponents, supported by field data, highlighted the plausibility of major cool-down effects if efforts could be scaled, while critics, supported by recent meta reviews, flagged risks of ecosystem disruption, governance challenges, and political distractions from core emission reduction goals. The debate captured headlines in science and mainstream news outlets and reflected broader divisions between technological optimism and ecological caution in the climate movement. World Food Day on October 16th brought harsh reminders of deepening global hunger as aid organizations rang alarm bells over historic shortfalls in foreign and amidst conflicts, displacement, and climate shocks. The World Food Program and UN agencies warned that cuts to the humanitarian funding had left millions at risk, especially in the global south, with women and girls bearing the brunt of food insecurity and recovery setbacks. On October 13th, 2025, the U.S. celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day in lieu of or alongside Columbus Day. The day honored Native American history, culture, and resilience with official recognition in 17 states, Washington, D.C., and many major cities. Events across the country marked the occasion through educational programs, public celebrations, and advocacy in a national movement to reflect on the country's origins, colonial violence, and the ongoing contribution of indigenous peoples. October also featured Oktoberfest events in German-descended communities, Diwali preparations globally, and international awareness days such as World Food Day. The NFL delivered dramatic games in weeks 6 to 7 with key wins by Buccaneers, Giants, Patriots, Panthers, Colts. Notable performances included Jackson Dart's breakout for the Giants and Baker Mayfield's strong showing for Tampa Bay. The league continued to showcase parity and unpredictability as several underdog teams upset preseason favorites. October 15th brought the announcement of the 77th Emmy Awards nominations for television excellence. Drama series Severance on Apple TV Plus led with 27 nominations, followed by HBO's The Penguin and The White Lotus. In comedy, The Studio, The Bear, and What We Do in the Shadows were recognized. The Daytime Emmys presented on October 17th saw General Hospital and Life with Kelly and Mark among the top winners. Cultural debates continued over representation inclusively and the role of streaming and traditional networks in shaping entertainment access and content. So, in conclusion, the week of October 12th to 18th, 2025 encapsulated the complexities, contradictions of the global present. In the United States, the government shutdown and No Kings protest captured the enduring struggle for democratic accountability, fiscal balance, and civil liberties. Globally, economic anxiety, scientific marvels, humanitarian emergencies, and bold technological gambits played out in interlocking spheres. Breakthroughs in fusion energy, gene therapy, and quantum networking hinted at new frontiers, while emerging global crises and ambitious, sometimes dangerous, technological interventions remind us of persistent fragility. This week's cultural and sports events provided moments of collective reflection, joy, and release amidst historic uncertainty. As the news cycle turns, these stories form essential context for ongoing debates over governance, innovation, sustainability, and justice, and offer listeners a powerful, comprehensive record of a moment when history accelerated in both troubling and hopeful ways. Thank you all for joining me. I'm your host, BamBam. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and definitely comment below. And I will see you on the next one. God bless. Goodbye, goodbye. Peace.
Catch the wave, let your dreams ignite. In the world of business, reach new heights. Join the journey, hear the words unfold. Bam Bam's vision, turning stories to gold.